Hi there, this is Kevin Dolan from Client Cloning Systems. I want to welcome you to this. It's a very exciting case study I want to share with you today with two of my clients. We recently had a big win for them. They're a SaaS firm here in Minnesota, doubled their sales pipeline in 40 days. And I want to get right to things and welcome my clients to the call. So David Allen and Mike Snuffer, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Kevin.
My pleasure. So Mike, you are the president of Modus Election Software, is that correct?
That is correct.
And David, you are the vice president of sales.
Yep, Vice President of Business Development.
Excellent. So I want to talk about kind of a before and after here for folks. Could you quickly describe it? It can be Mike or David. Describe your business for people who might not be familiar with what you do.
Yeah, we're a small company. We work with local city and county governments to help, and we provide software. And so we help them with planning and coordinating elections. So it's a very niche market, and it's a market that we understand very well. And because it's a smaller group of people, and yeah, so that's what we do.
And if I could elaborate, I mean, from my understanding, it's a high trust sale that you have to make.
For sure.
Long sales cycle, multiple
Yes.
decision makers.
6 to 12 months typically, yeah, on the
And
decision.
you may even be, David, you may even be dislodging a competitor or just trying to really overcome a lot of inertia. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Kevin. There will be existing processes that people have that they're very comfortable with. They're used to doing things with Excel spreadsheets. Maybe they had an access program, or possibly there is a competitor that's in there. And so you have to always compete against. That's the way we've always done it from a business perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are some of our challenges that we overcome.
And it's not a $50 product, correct? We're talking 4, 5, 6 figures lifetime value.
Oh, yes.
5, 6 figures, actually.
5, 6 figures, absolutely, over a lifetime.
So lots of hurdles, which makes for a good challenge. And we were just coming out of COVID when we got together. So talk quickly just a bit about what was going on before you found Client Cloning Systems. What was happening? What was going on with your sales a few months ago before we met?
Well, before we met you, our sales had really ground down to a halt. Before COVID, we were having success, but our model was we would have to travel either by car or plane to meet with prospective clients in a state. Being that they're government agencies, they are receptive to being able to meet people. Unlike in the private sector, it's hard to do that. So we would have to travel to them, set up an initial conversation, and then come back to have that initial conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But during COVID, it ground to a halt because of the restrictions with buildings being closed. We couldn't go and knock on the door and meet with them initially to set up that first appointment.
Right. So you're talking about a very high touch process there. But again, it goes back to the fact that it's a very high trust sale with a lot of objections to overcome. So before we started working together, did you have any doubts, before, bringing us on? I mean, doubts, fears, worries, what was going through your mind?
Yes, I would say, David has done this kind of thing before. And so he was the one who suggested we look at something like this. And I was a bit skeptical, I will say. Mm-hmm. We've done the direct marketing via phone. We've done those kinds of things, and limited success at best. Sometimes it's actually been we've lost sales that we potentially could have gotten by showing up. And so yeah, I was concerned. How is sending a letter or doing those kinds of direct marketing going to have any different impact than the kinds of direct marketing that we've already tried?
Sure. And that's understandable. So with that in mind, what were we able to do to dispel those doubts? And, I guess what made things finally click and you decided, okay, let's give this a shot? What was the turning point there in your thought process?
Do you want?
Well, I would say that, we needed to try and do something different. That
definitely.
It was because we couldn't get out to meet the people that we wanted to do. As I mentioned, as Mike mentioned, I said, I knew you, Kevin, from some other projects, and I said, this is a resource we should try and make the decision to go forward with. We need to try something different that will allow us to reach a new market where we haven't been able to get to that before.
Hmm. So I was
Yeah.
kind of realizing that the definition of insanity is to keep trying, do the same
Yes.
thing over and over. And hey, we got to do something different. So that's what made you pull the trigger. So how
Yeah.
about when we first started working together? What was the first thing that clicked when you realized, hey, this might, be a good idea? What was the first thing that clicked when we were working together?
Well, I think one of those things, Kevin, was that it's your ability to be able to understand what we had with a successful marketing, albeit it was one that required a lot of travel and labor costs to be able to do that.
Hmm.
But you being able to understand what a successful marketing high touch approach we were doing, and to take that perspective and be able to put it into our words, but more importantly, put it into the words and the voice of our customers so that it would resonate with them and to
Hmm.
be able to open up doors and have future conversations.
Good. Yeah. And if I could diverge a bit here, what we didn't make stuff up. It wasn't super creative. We weren't repositioning your company, no rebranding. What this was a three-part process. There was a direct mail touch, some email, and some phone follow-up, all based on a single really delighted client that you had. We took one of your best testimonials. We simply expanded on it. And our interview process, we chatted by phone and by email. We gathered a lot of information about what's going on in the minds of these people, and we simply basically used that delighted client that you already had as kind of a master yeast cell, and then we brewed some really profitable beer, I guess, to really mangle an analogy here. But there was no making stuff up. We were simply leveraging
Right.
a success story that you already had,
Right.
and through the information gathering process, we really got clear on these are the pain points of these people. And I think, Mike, you said, you'd lost sales before. These are very suspicious people. So if we showed up with a message that, raised their sales shields, they
Yeah.
shut you down very fast, correct? I mean, there's not a lot of margin for error here.
Yeah, that's true. And it's a client base that tends to be overlooked by their peers. And so they don't have a lot of bandwidth for the kind of conversations that are going to make them feel bad about what they're doing and those kinds of things.
Hmm.
We've learned to be careful in how we approach them and connect with them, for sure.
Yeah, and that messaging was a minefield. We want to push emotional hot buttons. Everyone knows that
Yeah, yeah,
we buy based on emotion, then we use logic to justify the sale. But there were some minefields. We tiptoed around them, with some thorough research. So
yep,
next question would be, what was the first in the fast little win that you guys saw? Like, what was the first wow? How long did it take after we mailed that first letter for you to see
yeah.
progress?
Yeah,
What happened?
it's kind of interesting because I kind of stepped away from the process. We had those original interviews, and David and I put some stuff together, and I kind of went off and did CEO things and technical stuff for a few weeks, and David was, keeping the engine moving forward on this campaign. And step back in 2, 3 weeks later, and David's like, yeah, I've had 13 conversations already from this mailing we did to 24 people. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, what? And
Good.
then it was, and by the way, we need to schedule meetings with 6 of them because they want to meet with us online or in person. And so that was shocking to me. I was hoping, if this really works well, maybe we get 5 to 10%, 10%, that we can reach via phone
Uh-huh.
and move forward with from there. But I was not prepared for we've had conversations with 50% and 25% are ready to take the next step and having a conversation. So that was really fun.
Excellent. That's the kind of surprise you want to give
Exactly.
the boss, right, David? I mean, I
Yeah,
think we saw some rapid results. Can you walk me through it? What was the first, we mailed, I think on a Monday. What
yeah,
started happening that first week?
sure. So we did a series of mailings at your suggestions. So we sent out the first mailing in the middle of March on a Monday, and I did receive an inquiry towards the end of the week from one of the locations. But then we followed up with doing emails and then following up with phone calls. And it was with the phone calls that I would reach the people and be able to say, hey, did you get the letter that was the testimonial
Hmm.
from this person that we used? Some remembered them, some didn't, but it was an opportunity in which to be able to have the conversation and say, I'd be happy to remail the letter to you.
Mm-hmm.
So we started that in mid-March, and within 40 days had been already scheduling appointments with people, and we've been going through and meeting with some of those people now in the month of the end of May and June timeframe.
Excellent. So do you have any rough numbers you can share with us, David, if you don't mind? I
Sure,
mean, like the number of
sure.
accounts
The,
we targeted. Yeah, go
yep,
ahead.
the number of accounts, if you will, counties that we targeted were 24. And I had conversations with 13 of them and scheduled the next step, which is a discovery conversation with 6 of them.
Excellent.
And from that, then we were scheduling demonstrations and then proposals. And we're happy to report that 2 days ago, we got a first order from one of the counties that we were talking to in this state. So it
Fantastic.
dramatically shortened our length of sales time and also our travel expense dramatically down.
Super. So, I mean, 24, we say counties and,
Mhm.
and that's where they are, but we could also say accounts, but 24
Sure.
targeted and then 6 actual discovery calls
Exactly.
and
Mhm.
1 sale already. Would you say that's a pretty rapid turnaround in terms of the sales cycle? Is that unusual?
Very rapid,
Yeah.
because normally it takes longer, in which from a traveling standpoint to individually target as opposed to targeting a larger group. You're having to do the old traditional sales call planning. You're going to a city, and so you have to try and target who's in that city, if you're either traveling to them by plane or if you're
Hmm.
traveling there by car. And here we could cover a much larger area and be able to start to manage those responses more effectively.
Mhm.
Outstanding. Would you mind sharing, total revenue in the pipeline as of, today? I know it's 40 days. We kind of more than doubled it, but what are our numbers to date right now?
If you're looking at the lifetime value of these customers, we are now in excess of 300,000
Wow.
revenue standpoint. So
That's fantastic. And it's because you're a smart SaaS firm where it's not
correct,
just a one-shot deal. So
right,
$300,000 realistic lifetime value in the pipeline.
right.
Excellent.
Just on this initial campaign.
And
Yes,
that's to the 24. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
so
And we haven't even gotten to all of them because there's others that we'll eventually probably get to. So this is just from the initial 6 that we've been talking to.
we have
Mike's
a good
smiling.
problem. We can only follow up with so many at a
You now have a
time.
capacity problem. Nice one to
That's
have.
right.
So I mean, and this is, I mean, to date now, so that's I'm guessing what, 60 days,
Mhm.
300,000
Right.
plus. Well,
Mhm.
that's more than I imagined. Really, that's a surprise to me. So let me break this down quickly and then we'll wrap up here. But what we did here with this first mailing was not a sales letter, it was an endorsement. We bypassed sales resistance because the letter was a story from one happy client to a prospective client. And we're all trained to read and appreciate and pay attention to stories, right? So that was the strategy here. It's what I do for all projects like this. You could write the best sales letter in the world, but if it comes from company to person, our sales shields are up. And we read that with a completely different mindset. But this was an endorsement letter, a success story. The subsequent letters 2 and 3 were from David, the account person, the software. We didn't call you sales rep, by the way. That's a little 101. No, you're the software expert. There's a lot of little nuts and bolts here that we don't have time for here, but the psychology was success story followed by phone call, email, and then 2 and 3 letters. And it's a multi-prong approach, 3 different media. I mean, would you say, you know, in the past, you've done maybe 1 or 2 media you've called and then maybe emailed? Have you ever done 3 media together like this?
No, we hadn't. It had been either physically touching them by going in and talking to them face to face across the counter. We had tried some other things via just an email going out to the people that we may have met at a conference and follow up with an email on that. But I think the key was the letter that you crafted with the success story and wrapping that in a way that helped open up the doors in the conversations for people.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of a direct mail piece. It's selling power multiplied. And this is all based on a very good testimonial you had buried on your website. It's there, but it's people find it passively. But we put it in front of people proactively. We turned it into a longer story that was very much in the voice of the market. And that's why we multiplied the selling power this way. And then last bit of, blocking and tackling here is that it was a letter, a tangible thing people could hold in their hands, which is the next best thing to you shaking hands with them, across the desk, across the counter. So they're holding a physical message, proof that this is a tangible company with a tangible product that's going to deliver tangible results. So a little bit of psychology there, but obviously it worked for you guys. So the combination was outstanding. Of course, you had to implement it, and you did. So kudos to you for giving us. You can't multiply zeros, so you already had a good sales process. You just hit a trough, but we were able to find the winning message and multiply it for you. So just a great story, fellas. I'm so glad to have helped you, move things along faster this year. I guess last question would be for someone watching this who maybe where you were a few months ago, skeptical, or they've got questions or don't think this can work for them. What would you say to someone watching this who might be thinking about working with client cloning systems?
Mike, why don't you start?
Yeah, sure. One of the things, I appreciate about you, Kevin, is that you know what you're good at, and you know what kind of company you can help. And so it was part of our first conversation. I think you just mentioned that, we can't multiply zeros. We work, if you're a company who already has a good sales process, client cloning systems is just going to help you multiply that effect and speed up that sales process. And for us, it reduced our upfront costs massively and the amount of time. And so, yeah, that's one of the things I really appreciated about you, Kevin, is that you're not just trying to sell anybody and try to get another client. You understand what you're good at and who you can help, and can provide that upfront consultation for folks.
Thanks so much. David, anything to add?
Yeah, Mike said a lot of great things there, and to expand upon it, I've had the opportunity to work with you before in some another project, and I knew we'd have success with this as well too. But it's your ability to think differently than how I would think or Mike would think. That you bring a different, fresh perspective on what would be good trigger words to, not trigger words, but phrasing that is going to catch the eye and the interest of the user, the person reading this. But it is certainly put together, you've helped us put together a process that is we can replicate going forward and expand our capabilities, so that as we have the need to add additional salespeople, we can plug them into this process that we have found is successful in opening up doors and doing it in a much faster time frame than we could have done in our previous business model method.
Fantastic. Mike and David, I really want to thank you both for sharing your story today. It's been really wonderful having you on.
Thank you.
Thanks.